Hello, everybody, and I want to welcome you to week one of my 10-week grieving workshop, where I use what I have learned, different tools that I've learned in therapy, and personal experiences to share information that I know about grieving and things that have helped me push through. I hope you enjoy. This is week one, and the week one topic is processing loss, the denial phase. Before I start, something that I always like to do is a self check-in. So a lot of people know Joey from Friends, and he used to be like, "How you doing?" So I'm asking all of you out there, how you doing? Take a minute to respond to that question, maybe out loud, or maybe if you want to write some things down on a notepad. I'm going to give you like 30 seconds to a minute to do that. All right, moving on. We all have the unfortunate but shared experience that if we walk this earth, we will experience loss. This is a given. This is a guarantee. This is something that we're all going to face at some point in time. Some losses are big and some are small, but it's all relative. There's something that I heard before which said if you take a newborn baby and you pinch the back of its neck, the pain that they experience when you do that is going to be the worst pain at that stage of their life that they have ever felt. So don't let anyone make you think that your loss is too small for you to grieve. Loss is not limited to just people. It can be the loss of a job, it can be the loss of a pet, it could be losing a place that brings you memories and comfort. And I've experienced all of these at different times in my life. Again, there is no loss that is not worth recognizing. So this is a quick reflection and feedback section. What do you think about when you hear the term denial and grief? And again, I'm going to pause for 30 seconds to a minute just to give you a chance to think about your answer to this question. Okay, let's resume. Denial is widely recognized as the first stage of grief after a loss. This is one of the most recognized models of moving through grief. The five stages of grief: the denial stage, the anger stage, the bargaining stage, the depression stage, and finally, acceptance. But as many people will tell you, you see these arrows that are looping all over the place. That is to tell you that you can go back and forth through any of these stages. And sometimes you can even be in little in between pockets. Grief is complicated and fluid. It's not something that just goes linear A, B, C, D, E. And I used to think of denial as only literally being in denial, like saying they're not gone. But I learned that it's a little more complex and multifaceted than that. I thought the denial was like the conspiracy theorists who think that Elvis Presley has been alive all this time, literally just thinking that this person is not really God. In the denial stage, you are not living in actual reality, rather, you are living in a preferable reality. Your subconscious is giving you a different reality or maybe a slightly altered reality in order to protect you from feeling the full brunt of your loss. Instead of becoming completely overwhelmed with grief, we deny it, do not accept it, and stagger its full impact on us. Interestingly, it is denial and shock that help you cope and survive the grief event. It aids in pacing your feelings of grief. Now, I want to ask all of you, who remembers this moment? For those who do, I don't even have to give you an explanation, but this was actually probably one of the saddest moments of my childhood, which is right after Mufasa got trampled to death in The Lion King after Scar set him up and he was protecting his son. And there was the whole scene where Mufasa was like, "Brother, help me," when he was escaping after saving his son. And then Scar put his paws on him and said, "Long, long live the king," and threw him off, and he got trampled. And then here was Simba. His father passed right there in front of his eyes. And he literally just could not believe that he was gone. He couldn't process that. Scar told him to run away. Run away and never return. And then he told the hyenas to kill him. And then he met denial, the embodiment of denial. Timon and Pumbaa. Timon and Pumbaa encouraged Simba to not think about his past. You got to leave the past behind you. Everybody remembers Hakuna Matata. Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. Hakuna Matata. What a wonderful phrase. Anyways, you can go look up the song on YouTube. Timon and Pumbaa were a really pleasant way for Simba to not have to think about his loss. He didn't have to think about the weight or the pressures of going back to face his family and friends and explain to them why Mufasa was no longer here. He thought it was him, but he would have found out otherwise if he had not been manipulated into running away. But I remember this particular scene because at the beginning, as you can see in this picture, everything was fun and they lived this carefree lifestyle, but he still had this thing nagging in his mind. Like, I miss my dad. I miss my life back home, and avoiding it has not necessarily taken it away. It has just delayed the grieving process. So I remember one night they were laid out looking at the stars, and he was basically bearing his soul about his dad and everything, and Timon and Pumbaa laughed at him. So they were good friends, but their EQ, their emotional quotient, was a little bit low, and he left. And then I remember Timon was like, "What's wrong with him? What's the matter with him?" They didn't understand that this laissez-faire lifestyle was a big representation for him of just avoiding his problems. He was in denial. But the past caught up to him. I remember this particular scene after Rafiki discovered the symbol was still alive after a long time of thinking that he had died. When Rafiki found him, he chased him around and he hit him with this stick that you can see in this picture. And he hit him in the head, and Simba was like, "Ow, why'd you do that?" And then he swung the stick again, and the second time Simba ducked. And he said, "Oh, yes, the past can hurt, but the way I see it, you can either run from it or you can learn from it." So eventually we went through this whole saga of Nala finding him and telling him about what was going on Pride Rock and that he has to come back and take his throne as rightful king from Scar, who's starving them and he's running amok in the kingdom. And I thought that that was just I thought that that was just an amazing example when I was thinking about what to do for this part of this presentation. So here's a picture from the dramatic scene of him returning to Pride Rock after having his big fight with Scar and having the revelation that Scar actually was the one who killed Mufasa and had this whole big setup. And here he was about to take his rightful throne again as the king of the Pride. So, to revisit some examples of denial: feeling shocked and emotionally numb, being unable to process emotions, avoiding reminders of the loss, staying busy to avoid thinking about the loss, procrastinating in dealing with the loss and all its consequences, avoiding conversations about what you have lost. I wanted to talk about what denial has looked like for me. I lost my dad in April of 2023, so as of the recording of this video, it's been close to a year. I didn't shed a tear for a month, and that includes when I actually got the call that he was gone. That includes when my mom and I went to go see him and see his body in the nursing home before he went to the funeral home. It includes over the course of many different calls I was receiving. It includes when I was by myself in my room. I just didn't cry. And I felt like I was broken for that. I felt sad, but I couldn't emote in the way that I felt like I was supposed to be emoting. It didn't feel real for me at all. I wasn't able to get a full night's sleep because I would have vivid dreams where he was there talking to me. And you know those dreams when you wake up and you're like, that really did just happen, didn't it? That's what it was like. He was there in my dreams. Not even the version of him that was sick with dementia. The version of him that was well and walking around and smiling and happy. And he was talking to me in those dreams. And these dreams were happening nightly. And when I woke up, the reality of him not being here did not feel like the reality. The dream felt like the reality. The part of me waking up and him not being there felt like the nightmare. And when anyone asked me how I was coping, I mostly gave standard answers such as, it's tough, but I'm doing the best I can. And that's not because that answer wasn't true. It is tough, and I have been doing the best that I can, but it was a matter of if I indulge too much into this, I'm not going to be able to complete my daily tasks, my work, my job, and my responsibilities call for my attention. And if I revisit this 15 times a day with everybody who asks, my mind might go to a space where now I'm not able to accomplish that. And I had a numbness towards everything going on around me. I was still in the world, and I was still amongst people, and I was still going places and doing different things, but I had a numbness towards everything around me. I felt void of emotions. My mind was holding on to what was behind me because I didn't want to think about what's next. I felt like a part of my mind was just clinging to my dad and holding on to him as if he was still right here. Because I was like, the minute that I start thinking about the future is that acknowledgement that him being here is a part of the past, and I was not ready to feel that. How long did it take for me to recognize that I was in the denial phase? I recognized it when I was already out of it. I did not recognize when I was in it. Your body and your mind tell you when it's time, and the time is different for everyone. It took me about 4 months before I really felt the impact of what had happened. And that was on his birthday when my phone showed me memories of our celebration the year before, which was he was in hospice care at that time. He was in the nursing home, and I took a half day off work intentionally. It was a Monday, and I knew that his time was coming soon. I didn't know when, but I knew it would be soon. And I brought my ukulele over there. I played some songs to him. I sang to him. I watched some of his favorite movies and TV shows and sports that he liked. And I called a lot of video called a lot of his friends and family so they could say happy birthday. He couldn't speak at that time, but I know that he appreciated it because he kind of livened up. It felt like my grieving process had just begun, but I've learned that it began the minute I got the call that he was no longer here. The only thing that changed was the true awareness of what was happening. And by true awareness, I mean conscious awareness, because subconsciously, my mind knew that the grieving needed to take place, but it also knew that I was not ready at that point in time. Now, just take a minute to ask yourself if you have experienced this personally and what has the denial phase looked like for you. And once again, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds. Think about it, write it down. If you have to pause the video, and we'll go from there. Okay, ways to move through a denial phase. Acknowledge and accept your feelings. Don't go against the grain. Accept your feelings and emotions, even though they may be uncomfortable. I'm sad, I'm angry, I'm depressed. Whatever comes, let it come. Don't try to steer the river. Seek professional help if needed. Nowadays, there are unlimited resources for help, whether it be a professional psychologist, psychiatrist, whether it be a peer counselor like myself, or whether it be a hotline, or whether it be an online chat. There's so many different ways, and there's so many different professionals, or even people who are not necessarily professional, maybe a trusted friend or somebody that can provide you with a sounding board and a listening ear. Practice self-care. This is one of the most neglected things when someone first experiences a loss. And we tend to think of self-care when we're well as something extra that we might do. Oh, I'm going to go to the nail salon. I'm going to go to the barber shop. I'm going to go to this sports game. I'm going to go to this concert, something that I really love. But when it comes to facing some kind of loss, especially when it's a major one for you, self-care could be basic things. Getting up in the morning, showering, changing your clothes, getting outside and getting some fresh air, eating. A lot of people don't have an appetite during that time period, so they're not eating. Give yourself time. Everybody's timeline is different. And set boundaries. This could mean setting boundaries for yourself in terms of I'm only going to spend a certain amount of time per day reviewing old videos, pictures, albums, and living in that because it might be doing more harm than good if you spend excessive amounts of time dwelling on the past. Or it could be setting boundaries for others who either maybe always want to talk to you about the loss when maybe you want to talk about something lighter sometimes. Or it could be setting boundaries in terms of maybe you have people who are really needy or they typically lean on you when you're doing well and you don't have the emotional capacity to be there for them in the same ways that you normally are and telling them, I only have a cup this big and right now it's full. So I'm not able to take anything more on. I experienced that one quite a bit, especially in the early months after my dad passed. And a lot of people disappeared because of that, but the real ones stayed. The real ones understood. Lastly, denial is a built-in defense mechanism. There's good and bad to it, but it's important to understand that it's all a part of the process. It can seem long and unending, but eventually it will end and the feelings will lessen. Be patient and be kind to yourself. Our topic for week 2 is going to be navigating through the anger stage of grieving. I want to thank all of you for joining. I strongly appreciate it, and I hope that everybody has an amazing day, and we will talk again soon.